Welcome to Supercool, the show about real-world climate solutions that cut carbon, boost the bottom line, and improve modern life. Each week on Supercool, we go behind the headlines to pinpoint the stories and data, accelerating the low-carbon economy in towns and cities across the U.S. and around the globe. I'm your host, Josh Dorfman. Stay up to date on Supercool by subscribing or following us wherever you're listening, and please leave us a review. And if you want more Supercool, subscribe to our weekly newsletter that expands on the topics we cover here on the podcast. Mike Martin has toured with U2, collaborated with Dave Matthews to launch the first ever climate change concert tour in the early 1990s. He co-wrote the original environmental rider for musicians, the one Steve Miller asked for, the one Jack Johnson and Billie Eilish now have venues follow. He's helped flip stadiums vegan, built the green blueprint for Live Nation, and brought together the top 20 environmental organizations to turn concerts into climate megaphones. So how did this guy end up obsessing over cups? After 25 years trying to make recycling and compostables mainstays at live events, Mike hit a wall. Zero waste wasn't working. The signage was perfect, the incentives were there, and still 90% of everything went to the landfill. So he stopped trying to fix a broken system and started designing the one we actually need. And he built r.World, a national reuse company making single-use obsolete. And the stakes? They're massive. An estimated 3 to 4 billion single-use plastic cups are thrown out at live events every year in North America alone. That's billions of cups, used once, then tossed, at venues meant to bring people together, not generate waste. Today, r.World is building the infrastructure for a real circular economy, where products don't get used once and thrown away, but instead flow through a loop of recovery, redeployment, and reuse. They've set up high-volume wash-ups in major cities, trained staff, built tracking systems, and made reuse drop-dead simple for venues and fans alike. They're outfitting legendary music venues like Red Rocks outside of Denver, world-class sports and music arenas like the Crypto Arena in Los Angeles, and college football stadiums like the one at Cal Berkeley. They've even brought reuse to 30,000 feet with Alaska Airlines. And this spring, they're flipping Coachella from single-use to reuse, one not so pretty, yet perfectly functional cup at a time. Mike calls it his PhD in cups, earned not in a classroom, but at load in, load out, and every sticky beer-soaked venue in between. In this episode, we talk about what he's learned, what it takes to turn reuse into real infrastructure, and why ugly cups might just be beautiful after all. Here's our conversation. Mike, welcome to Supercool.
Glad to be here. I love your sign that says "Stay cool."
It is appropriate if the sign fits.
Well, the thing is, I live in Minnesota, so it's really easy, like 7 months out of the year, to stay cool.
Yes.
Super cool. Really super cool.
Well, let's put it. You have a head start on the
Yeah.
rest of us. We should put it that way. So, as I was getting ready to have a chance to speak with you and looking, of course, at r.World, which we'll talk a lot about, and your background and what led to r.World, I came across this connection that you have with the band U2. And what I was thinking was, wow, because that's my favorite band of all time. But beyond wow, I was thinking, geez, what is it like to try and follow your act if it's like parent career day at school? And someone's like, well, my dad tours with U2 and he greens the band and he greens the stadiums and he's saving the planet with U2. So your background, r.World, everything you're doing is so interesting culturally from a business perspective. Take us back a little bit to the beginnings of r.World. Talk about U2, please. And what has led to this really inspiring business you're building today?
I thank you so much. Actually, let me take it back a little bit further if I could. So I was a real estate investment banker on Wall Street in the 80s. And Exxon Valdez happened. And I thought, this is not what business should be doing to the planet. It shouldn't be destroying it. A capitalist, but let's see if we can figure out how to use capitalism to do good. So I left that in 1990. I worked together with a group of people and we produced the National Earth Day concert that took place in Washington, D.C. 500,000 people on the mall. The next week, I get a call from this guy. His name is Jonathan Kraft. My dad just bought the New England Patriots. We love what you did there. If we give you our stadium, will you put that event on here? And that basically launched me on this path. I've spent the last 35 years now identifying major sustainability issues and then coming up with companies or concepts that become campaigns and movements. And r.World is really sort of a result of all the work that I've done up to this point to get there, in the sense of I introduced sustainability to the music industry when I produced these events. I thought if we're producing a concert for the environment, you got to produce it sustainably. So why don't we introduce this thing called recycling at live events, and then composting and eco villages and all these things that are now done? I introduced. Steve Miller performed our 91 concert and he said, "Hey, I love what you did to produce this event sustainably. Can you help me figure out how to get my tour to be sustainable?" So I wrote a rider. When an artist performs, they have production riders and catering riders. I wrote the Enviro rider, which was the instructions of what Steve wanted venues to do. And that basically became the document that the industry globally uses to green events over the years. When Dave Matthews heard about it, so I started doing it for him. And then Jack Johnson was in clubs and his wife called and said, "I heard about this. My husband cares about this." So I developed a very elaborate version of it and so forth and so on. Live Nation then in about 2014, 2015 asked me to come in and develop their sustainability strategy and their 5-year plan. And we worked on water, we worked on energy, we worked on all the issues, but we started to work on waste. And up to this point, from all these events, I've been trying to get people to recycle at live events, buying everything from trash goalies to rewards, gamification. Live Nation gave me free reign to go in and do this. And so I had bioplastic cups and just recycling, got rid of all plastic. And I thought this is going to be brilliant. We will have a complete zero waste event. And what ended up happening at the end of the day is 90% of the waste still went to landfill, even though we did everything perfectly, signage and rewards and everything. And I got really depressed for about 6 months. And I thought, my God, I've spent some 25 years of my life trying to get this to work, and it's never going to work. And then I remembered what I'd seen with U2 in Europe, how there was reusable cups being used at live events. And so I thought, well, why aren't we doing that here? And that was the genesis of r.World. That's why I started it.
I love that. Thank you for walking me through all of that. So I'm trying to envision what that would be like. I can imagine it would be a thrill, a rush. I mean, Steve Miller calling you up and saying, "Hey, we need an environment rider, make it organic vodka," right? Like, kidding. Or maybe not.
Include
I don't know.
Papa dishes. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And there's always been this view, and maybe it relates directly to your work. Can icons, can pop culture influence behavior around sustainability? All these musicians, they literally have the microphone in their hands, as you've said, to spread a message. And if people are seeing this at an event where they are in peak, perhaps openness, receptivity, maybe to messages, particularly from their idols or icons on stage, it makes sense theoretically. Do you see that in practice, that this really is a way to impart a message that can change behavior?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And there's actually been a bunch of studies done on this. Most recently, Adam Met from AJR, who is a professor at Columbia, actually did the study and went out and researched with fans what they learned, how it moved them, and so forth. And it does show impact. As you say, just theoretically, it should work. You think of like athletes, you think of movie stars, you think of musicians. They all have a platform, but there's a big difference. Athletes are out there playing the game. They might get a microphone if they win the game and they'll thank God or whatever, and they don't get into a lot of social issues. Actors have a huge platform, but they're saying other people's words for the most part. They're not traveling around the world connecting directly with people. Artists are traveling around the world. Music artists are canaries in a coal mine. They see the world, they experience things, and they're able to talk directly to fans. And I co-created an organization called the Music Sustainability Alliance. This is essentially the green association for the music industry. I started with a friend of mine, Amy Morrison, and we've got 3,000 members throughout the music industry that are part of this. And we look at the role of Music Sustainability Alliance to help the music industry do two things. One is to green its own operations, get its act together, create systemic change internally by creating collaboration and educational opportunities on different sustainability topics. And the second thing is to maximize artists' impact on creating change in terms of the platform that they have. And they tie together because when an artist goes out and starts role modeling how to do things sustainably, it influences others. A very recent example, working with Billie Eilish, she did a bunch of shows in California. She wanted r.World to be implemented. For example, at SAP Center, that venue completely flipped into vegan. There was no meat or dairy at the venue at all. And it was an r.World activation. And they set up this mass transit systems that they'd never done before. And all Billy's fans learned about this. And now the venue is carrying them forward after she's left. That's quantified change. In addition to her fans learning about this and taking action, and her mom, Maggie Baird's organization called Support and Feed is there tabling, and people are learning about plant-based food options and climate change and the role of food and climate change and so forth. And I've seen that with Dave Matthews Band. We created the first ever climate change campaign, bringing the top 20 environmental groups together and creating a Ben & Jerry's ice cream flavor, which put climate change on the map. The environmental community was trying to figure out how to mainstream this concept. And by going on tour with Dave and doing press conferences and media and so forth, it launched the climate change movement.
Wow. Okay. That's an interesting point of view. So the change can be with fans, the change can be across the industry to get other musicians and artists on board. And then that change can actually, well, it can influence venues to then stick with things. So you're really talking about impact from something that's ephemeral, right? That has a moment in time. It lives. A Billie Eilish concert, it's here, it's gone. Okay, well, what is the enduring impact of bringing sustainability to that type of
Other
activation?
example, when we produced the Earth Day stadium concerts from 1990 to 95, we had Adam Werbach, who was the head of the Sierra Club. He was in high school or college, I guess. He came out and volunteered. That was the first thing he did in the environmental movement. And he got so inspired, he went up going that path and became the head of the Sierra Club. You have these examples out there of impact that happens as a result of this. You don't know exactly how it trickles out, but you see it. And there's anecdotal evidence. I've been doing this for so long. And so many people reach out to me with stories about how they were inspired from what they learned at a concert, and it works.
I love that. I know Adam as well. It's an amazing guy. And one of the companies he had started, it was called r.World, eventually became Trove. That's right, doing re-commerce for powering commerce on the Patagonia.com and other businesses. And so it's interesting because we'd actually just reached out to the current CEO who's going to come on Supercool to talk about the re-commerce industry. So Werbach's, yes, influence, and to think how that traces back in the culture, yeah, can have that impact. I really like that anecdote. Let's switch gears. Let's talk about r.World. I mean, all this backstory is fascinating. As you said, 35 years working in this, r.World brings together a lot of what you saw working, not working, what you felt like could be accomplished. It's interesting, your comment around trying to do recycling in a stadium environment or trying to do compostables, and yet that doesn't always necessarily go to plan with what you hope the result's going to be. I don't know if it's a hard thing or not. Let's go see if we can do reuse commercially at scale and try to bring something to market that doesn't quite exist. And so the other thing I'll just say before you tell us about r.World is I just find this fascinating because everyone knows, okay, reduce, reuse, recycle, the 3 R's. And we sort of say it, and we say it so much that it almost becomes, I wouldn't say becomes meaningless, but to take the reuse component and do it in the way that you're blowing it out or blowing it up. I mean, that's just the totally wrong language to apply. But to bring it to scale.
Creating a movement.
Creating a movement. It's so unique. So yeah, please tell us about r.World and what your company is doing now.
Well, it's funny. I feel over the last few years, I've gotten like a PhD in cups, which I didn't think I would ever get. I've learned it on the streets, though. Okay, so it's not legit, but an honorary doctorate in cups. So here's the first thing that people have to understand. It's upside down from what most people think. Okay, so the worst cup, how about cups, for example, that you can do for the environment is a single-use aluminum cup. Single-use aluminum cup is the worst thing you can do, like this sort of thing. Next better is a compostable cup. Next better is single-use plastic. And best by far is reuse. So people freak out when they realize that single-use aluminum and single-use compostable is worse than single-use plastic. And I hate plastic. But when you look at strict environmental impact, it's 86% more CO2 emissions in a single-use aluminum cup than a single-use plastic cup. In a compostable cup, the amount of chemicals and energy it takes to grow the crops and the manufacturing process to make these cups and to ship these cups over and over, it doesn't work. The other challenge with compostable cups is when they're put into a recycling container, it contaminates the recycling, and the recycling then has to go to landfill. So it makes recycling system break down even more than it already is. When you get to the single-use plastic cup, you guys have been hearing the statistics out there, only 9% of plastic is recycled. So despite all of our best efforts to do this, the whole waste system is sort of broken is how I looked at this. And there's a lot of wish cycling done in the world. And I looked at the live event industry that I know very well, and I realized it was a microcosm for society where everything is commingled and a lot of waste just ends up going to landfill. And it was that really, why I thought, well, this is a movement that needs to be created. And I foolishly thought, well, it'd be really cinchy to go just do cups at concerts and live events, and way more complicated than you would think. We make it really easy for our customers, but there's a lot of sausage making that's involved with it. The process is very simple. A sports facility, a school, a university, a corporate campus, a restaurant, whatever. We have an app, and they'll say, hey, we need 10,000 12-ounce cups delivered this day and this time, this location. We work 7 days a week. We have trucks that will drop off the cups. We will provide bins for people to put the dirties into. We provide training for the servers, video training for the maintenance people. Basically, every facility knows that this is reusable stuff, different colored bags, so they don't get confused with recycling or trash. We provide dumpsters to put the dirties into, and then they tell us when they want to pick up. We build wash hubs in economic development zones. We hire second chance folks, and we develop these really advanced wash systems, we call them wash hubs, that have automation and basically allow us to do washing at high volume. So we'll get the dirties back, we sort through them, we will put them through the wash system, we dry, we inspect them by hand. In some markets, we actually have an artificial intelligence quality control system. We will repack them and then we'll ship them back out. And we use some RFID tags for tracking the inventory. And that's the process. It's low tech, but it's actually very, very high operational intensity. I'll pause there for a second. Well, I'll say it. We started with U2, and as you can see, this is the U2 cup that we use. We started initially the way they did it in Europe, the European model, where we said, you're going to pay a $3 deposit for this cup. You can use the cup throughout the event. And at the end of the event, you can turn the cup in and get your money back. Or you can keep the cup. And guess what? Everybody kept the cup. But we still had to have people there with $3 bills handy to return in case people wanted to return the cups. It was just logistically very challenging. And we realized that we were just selling more plastic. Like souvenir cups that are used at major venues that people say, hey, this is good for the environment. That's not. You're just creating more waste. So that's why we evolved to the new model where we make these cups that look like this. They're sort of ugly cups. We call them ugly cups. They're very utilitarian and people don't necessarily want to take them home. As a QR code where people can learn about the single-use waste crisis and your role in it. This is the model. It works tremendously well now. There's no deposit taken. People are educated about the importance of reuse. And we're doing millions of units a month right now that we're washing all across the country. We have wash hubs in Seattle, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Las Vegas, Denver, the Twin Cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul, and Washington, D.C. And we have 15 markets that are asking for us to come build wash hubs. We've developed these strategic partnerships with the major event producers and major concessionaires. And it's exciting because we're the first company in the country. There's now dozens of others. We're about 20 times bigger than the closest other company that's out there. And we launched an industry that was needed.
Lots to unpack. Thank you for walking us through that, Mike. So for our listeners, Mike was holding up two cups. One was a highly coveted U2 concert Joshua Tree Tour cup. I think that was Joshua Tree, yeah? Yeah, Joshua Tree from 2017. So people would keep that. And then the other one, which I find really fascinating, is the current R cup. And the current R cup, as you said, now you said it's ugly, but here's the thing. You have a very unique design challenge. So the thing with the R cup, and of course, we'll provide all the links in the show notes so listeners can go see r.World. You have a design challenge where it has to be appealing enough for someone's going to pick it up and drink out of it, but it has to be ugly enough that no one wants to keep it, right? So that is I can't quite think of a corollary in any other industry where that's like the design brief. Like,
Yeah, we went through several different iterations. We finally realized that there's a little bit of an icon of what the cups going into a bin that people seem to relate to that. And it's amazing. We have an average 94% return rate, so people get it, right?
wow.
And it's interesting too. You talk about selling this in. It's so wild because the analogy I think of as far as building our brand. Think about that. If you want to say sell toothpaste, okay, you got to build your toothpaste brand. But it's more like first you have to educate people how toothbrushing works, and you have to educate them about why you need to brush your teeth. Like that's what we have to do. This is why it's so important to do reuse. This is how it works, and this is our motto, and our brand, and why you want to work with us. We got to go back to the beginning of how this works, and you don't have to do that for selling toothpaste. We've been fortunate in that people get it. Yeah, wait a minute. Why are we throwing all this stuff out? It's a trillion single use items are thrown out every year in the United States alone. There's 3 to 4 billion single use plastic cups thrown out at live events every year in North America and the United States alone.
That's shocking. I mean, yeah, we just don't think about it. You're just at a single event, and even if you see some waste at the end of the event, it's hard to imagine that those numbers are as big as they are. It sounds believable to me, but it's also shocking at the same time. Let's go back into how you set up. You mentioned you're building this national infrastructure for reuse, and it's cups and serveware. When you're opening a market, you mentioned you have relationships with the event producers, with certain concessionaires. What do you need to have in place to be able to say, yeah, we're going to actually invest into building a wash hub in the city because there's enough activity for us here. This market is now opened for us. Is that a stadium that gets on board, and then you have other venues that are getting on board? How do you think about what that looks like in terms of opening a new market?
It's a really, really good question. We analyze it based upon number of units that we can be washing. We're a for-profit company, but we're all about purpose. We prioritize environmental impact and operational excellence. 3 to 500,000 units per market, which sounds like a lot, but sadly it's not. For example, in Denver, we had 4 different venues, like 4,000, 2,000, 1,800 seat venue. And they alone were going through like 150,000 units a month. So you start to look at that, and that's why we have these 15 markets that are asking us to come build where there's enough demand there. We've now proven the business model. We've proven the environmental model, the economic model, the operation model. We have it all dialed in. We're out doing a Series A raise right now to be able to take advantage of all the demand.
Got it. Okay, so more infrastructure that can come into place
Yep.
to get this to expand further.
And there's importance because national brands want national solutions, whether it's the airlines or major corporations, they want a one-stop shop. So that's really what we're working to build.
I saw on National Reuse Day, October 20th, 2024, so a few months back, you ran, or r.World ran a pilot with Alaska Airlines. And I thought that was really fascinating. It was a pilot on flights running from Seattle to Minneapolis. And I thought that was brilliant because it's so visible in everyone's face when you're on that plane drinking out of that little tiny cup, and then you just like throw it right in the trash bag. And I know I have the reaction I think many people do, are like, really? All this stuff? Like, it's just so clear, right? That like, here's this bag, it's just all going to get thrown away. Nothing's going to be, recycled or repurposed in any way. So the optics of it struck me as, wow, that would be incredible if an airline would do that. And so what I'm imagining, it went well. I'm imagining the feedback was probably very positive for Alaska Airlines. And I'm imagining now they're saying, hey, can you be everywhere we fly? How big could we roll this out, Mike? What's it going to look like to really take this to scale? Is that how the conversation's going?
Yeah, a few things to hit on there. Number one, the passengers loved it. The flight attendants loved it. They feel like schmucks going through these millions of single-use cups and just throwing them out. I mean, it may go to recycling, but it's just the energy it takes, it's negative environmental impact. The pilot worked really great. I'm under NDA, so I can't say a lot, but I can tell you it's looking very good for carrying forward in some capacities. And you're right, they would love to have us if we go forward in every different market. But one of the things that we're talking with other airlines as well, the challenge is there's so many details need to flow into an operational thing like this. So in terms of security, how do you get cups in and out? In terms of the lightweight of cups, how many can stack in one of those trays? What the dimensions need to be? We actually are designing custom cups for this. And we've identified and brought technology from Europe, which is really cool, that has nitrogen infused plastic that uses 50% less plastic and is lighter weight. The nitrogen acts like styrofoam, so it's insulating, so it can be used hot or cold. This is what the cup looks like for people who are seeing.
Ugly yellow cup.
Another ugly
Fits,
yellow
fits.
cup, exactly.
Wow. So a couple of things that just I find fascinating about this. We're talking about reuse. And on the surface, that sounds like, oh, well, what's the big deal? You just come up with some cup that's reusable, you wash it, and you bring it back, right? But then to think, and this makes complete sense to me, an airline and probably a lot of venues and places where you want to be have very specific, although I imagine airplanes in general have a lot of very, very specific, well, specification that cup needs to meet. And so now you say, well, geez, we got to make this cup lighter. Let's go find a nitrogen infused plastic cup so that we can use all this advanced technology to get to quote unquote simple reuse. That's just really unexpected. What it means to me, and this makes complete sense, is that the airline is saying, this is great. Like everyone loves this. We need a drop-in replacement that doesn't force us to change in any way. And then we'll do this. R.World, figure that out, right? Like that
Yeah.
sounds like, yeah.
Well, I mean, really, what our product, and I view it a lot of ways, is innovation. We are carving a path through the jungle for reuse, and others are following, which is great. How do you make this work? How do you bring it together? What are the areas that work? I mean, one of the things that when we're talking about airlines, I want to explain just from vocabulary. There's closed loop environments. An airline is a closed loop environment. A concert venue, a sporting venue where you can't leave a facility with the cup or serveware item. That's what we're targeting. There's also open loop environments. That's your Starbucks, your McDonald's. Those are the places where people primarily leave with the items. And then you have hybrid, which are corporate campuses, food courts, universities, where most of the time is consumed on site, but you can take it off site. And the country needs to be educated before we can start to open loop reuse, because the country has been taught that it's okay to throw things out, and we need to try to educate them. That's what we're excited about. The major venues that we're in, we're educating millions of people all across the country about, oh, I guess this doesn't need to be thrown. We're using this, we're using it, we're using it. And that's opening up people's minds so that eventually we can get to hybrid applications and eventually to open loop applications.
What did you say in the beginning when we started this conversation? You said something about how much you know about cups. You didn't say you're the king of cups, but you had said,
No, I feel like I've gotten a
a
PhD in
PhD,
cups.
yeah, on the
Yeah,
street of
right,
cups.
right.
It's becoming really, it's crystallizing for me why that's so as we're having this conversation. And I can imagine you start this company. We talked about the tour with U2, 2017. You're seeing this happening in Europe, and you're like, hey, this is the solution. This solves the challenges I see with recycling and trying to recycle single-use plastic or bioplastic and compostables. Like, here's a solution. Here we are in 2025. I imagine there's a lot that's gone incredibly well. I imagine there's a lot that's like, whoa, I did not, like you couldn't anticipate what it's going to take to build this national infrastructure to accomplish. I mean, you've made incredible, incredible progress. I mean, your scale is beyond anything else that exists, certainly in this country. And yet the hurdles to get to where you want to go, I mean, it sounds like you have a clear path, but it is not without its challenges.
Oh, 100%. I want to say I am so fortunate. I have an amazing team that just works their butts off to make this happen. I have an amazing board that are brilliant, brilliant people, business leaders, thought leaders. And we have investors that have to see the vision. We have a tremendous group of investors that are 100% behind us, allowing it to happen, because there have been a lot of obstacles for sure. It costs more to do reuse than single use. Single use is cheaper, because guess what? That doesn't factor in the environmental impact of their product, the impact on society and so forth. It's just throwing things out for future generations to deal with, right? We factor everything in. Also, more importantly, the process to pick up, hand wash, repack, bring back, it takes more of the effort than it does to just throw out a cup. So we're up against that. You said the word before, there is existing infrastructure and people don't like to change. I say there's several reasons why it's hard to get reuse going. You can apply this to societal change on a lot of issues, but one is misinformation. People thinking that, or lack of information, people think that aluminum cups are better than reusable cups. There's inertia, there's apathy, there's economics, there's convenience. You have to overcome all those factors, I want to give a shout out to AEG, which is a huge concert promoter and one of the world's busiest venues, is Crypto Arena, formerly Staples Center in LA. They are all in. It's amazing how it's working, how it's happening. They have basically led the live event industry. The others are working to catch up to them because of their commitment to reuse. They're all the venues that the markets we're in, and they're expanding. We're doing Coachella this year, which is an AG project. It's people like that. Coca-Cola has made a commitment to reuse, and they are helping us with FIFA and the Olympics and so forth. Those are Coke properties, and so we're working to get reuse going at those. People who get it, who understand that there's environmental organizations, nonprofits upstream, and Oceana and others. And the last White House was very involved. There's a lot of Republicans that actually are behind reuse because it's creating jobs. This is a cool issue that's not partisan, which is helpful.
What's the revenue model? Is it a service contract?
Basically, yeah, clients pay per item that we deliver, and that covers all the costs, and there's no additional cost for the bins or the signage or training. We just make it work.
Awesome. So you mentioned the crypto arena. I think one of the things that we've seen on this show, some of the feedback we've gotten from listeners, is hearing a certain episode and saying, well, I really appreciate that conversation because now this sounds de-risked. So I can imagine folks are looking at a number of your venues, but like take the crypto arena where every major act's coming through and it's like, well, geez, if they can pull this off there, we can pull it off too. So it sounds like you have some of those tentpole clients that are really important as well for the continued rollout
Oh,
of what
totally,
you're doing.
totally. There's an imagination gap. There's fear of change. And the more that people see it working, succeeding, the more people are calling us. We're at Red Rocks, the world's largest or busiest outdoor venue. We're at Red Rocks in Denver. We're at UC Berkeley Football Stadium in San Francisco. The Meriwether Post IMP venues up in the DC area. A lot of huge venues. And there's a major artist that's going out touring. We're under NDA on that. We're doing all their stadiums this summer, which is really exciting, and working to get reuse going at some of the FIFA stadiums too. It's exciting. And that's the thing that hopefully if anybody who is in a position to choose reuse over single use is listening, is for them to know that there's hundreds of venue managers, concessions managers, operations managers that will tell you how great it works.
Fantastic. Mike, thank you so much for speaking with me today, coming on the show. Excited to follow your journey. Certainly applaud the work that you're doing and just love that you're starting to see so much success with r.World.
Well, thank you so much. It's really great to connect with you and connect with listeners. My email address is mm@r.World reuse. If anybody wants to reach out to me, have any ideas or questions or suggestions, this is how change happens. It's people working together to create impact, and that's what we're all about. So thank you very much, and you're helping by getting the word out about it.